Hello again, hi. Nice to have you with me. Well, if there is no time and no place. Okay, let's not get into that. Today I'm going to show you a picture that is... well, when I started this series, you know, all this is kind of more or less spontaneous. I do take some notes because otherwise through the emotion I just get too lost. But otherwise I try to do it as authentic as possible, and that was the same with the pictures. When I painted the pictures, I kind of sat with the topic until a picture came. I often see things in pictures. My intuition works in pictures. And then I just start, but I don't really know what will be there at the end. And that is kind of the same in this telling the story. So anyway, when I had come over my quite big shock and fear after two people, and the first one artist, and then I said, no, I can't do it. I can't paint my trauma. I can't do that. And then my husband, the day later, says the same thing, not knowing that the other guy had already said that. So then I thought, you know, it wasn't 3, it was 2, but anyway, that then I have to do it. And then I thought, thinking is a thing, you know, I thought all the pictures would be like this one, devastating, just dark colors, and it wasn't the case. Interestingly enough, if you followed this series, you saw it. Often it is contrast, but this one is really just dark. And the topic of it was the fear to lose control. And the fear to lose control, of course, if you're traumatized. A trauma is a loss of control, isn't it? It's something that happens too much, too far. It's a loss. You don't have control. You don't understand. Maybe it hurts. Maybe it's just terrible. You see terrible things happening. Could be an earthquake, you know. Can be getting raped. I mean, it can be all kinds of things. Or this what they call complex trauma, or I actually don't know what it's called in English. The development trauma, something that happens again and again and again and again and again, putting you over a long time into situations where you feel you don't have control, and you don't have security. You don't have an adult or a secure place to go to, a secure person to talk to, a safe person. So it could come through anything, but fear to lose control, of course, is something that is easy to understand, that it can come from a trauma. And this has really, when I started thinking about it, multiple things that can come from that are symptoms from that. And this is kind of what okay, I'll show you the picture, but it's tough. At least I think so. Okay, this will be so difficult to see, I think. But anyway, here is me. Little bit like Monk, the scream. And what I saw when I was kind of meditating on the topic was me desperately, here I'm also bleeding, you know, I'm losing blood, I'm thin, I'm eyes open, I'm really stressed, and I'm desperately putting boxes. I don't know if you can see this, or at least like this big stack of boxes that I'm stacking up against the monster. The monsters. And the monsters... Ooh, now I feel a bit sick. The monsters are the memories, right? The memories, a lot of the memories were gone for a long time. So the memory of when I was raped by an uncle before I was 1 year old didn't come until I was 34 and had met my husband. And what they say, and that makes sense biologically, is that the brain shuts it off, puts a lid on, because you are not capable. You would die maybe, or go crazy. I mean, it's just life gone. You can't act anymore. So biology protects life. And then when you are in a somewhat safe situation, the memory can come up. And in that very case, it was really, wow, extreme. I think I told about it already in another video. So that is maybe why there's this huge penis here with blood coming from it, and then here's a monster that turns out to look a bit like this, doesn't it? like me. And there's a lot of direction. I'm not... Yeah, here's a knife. That is actually supposed to be a scalpel. I'm not the world's greatest painter, actually. That was also overcoming a trauma, just starting to paint. Because the teacher in my elementary school, she hated me from day one. I think I've told you about that. So one thing she told me was, well, oh yeah, we were supposed to paint this garden, green grass and sky. We were supposed to paint that. And I don't know why, with watercolors, I made, maybe because I was bored, because this was like something we've done a million times, it felt to me. So I painted the sky green and the grass blue. And the flowers and the blue grass and stuff, everything normal, just I changed the colors of the grass and the sky. And instead of saying, wow, that's a nice new interpretation, what were you thinking? I'm not even sure I was thinking. I don't remember if I was thinking. She holds it up to the class and says, ha ha ha, Anya is so stupid. She doesn't even know what the color of the sky is. And everybody's laughing. So just to paint at all was coming over a trauma for me. So, I'm not educated, I've not taken any classes. I do have a husband who comes from an artist family, so he knows a lot about perspective and light and stuff. So if I have a certain problem, I can ask him, and he will, or how to blend colors in because I want something, or make shadows, or like these eggs there, that was like one of the first thing I tried to do. I think it was even something he told me to do, and it was so difficult. So he kind of helped me with that. Yeah, egg, that's my hope, that there will be a birth of myself in the end of this. That's why the egg is a symbol for, it's for eternal life, isn't it? It's also a symbol for cosmos, I think, in the Veda. Okay, back to this. It's not comfortable, is it? So scalpel. The scalpel is that, it signifies that I think I have a lot of trauma from doctors. I had a lot of operations in my face. I broke my nose when I was 7, and the doctor gave me a wrong treatment, so the whole inside was completely mushed up, and I couldn't breathe, and I kept dreaming that I'm drowning or suffocating, because I was sleeping, I guess, with my mouth closed, and then I wouldn't get air. So that was terrible, over years. So I had all these operations on my nose and on my lip. I bit through my lip So I had 5 operations on my lip, and the way I remember it, the doctors were not nice, and I didn't feel safe, and it felt like torture. Although, of course, I was getting anesthesia. But, yeah, no. And there's more stuff. I mean, I nearly died several times. So this scalpel stands for that. And then we come to the boxes, and I started here like as a kid. What did I do as a kid? So there's all these books. I read really early, and then I read all these stories, fairy tales. I just kind of got fairy tale addicted, I think. I think I read everything our library had on fairy tales, which became very interesting when I learned about Jung and archetypes and stuff, and so much later. And yeah, of course, toys, kind of toys and fairy tales. And then there's Mama with a big question mark. And here, that is almost dark now. It says religion, and I did very much try to find religion. As a child, until maybe I was 18. Really, really, really tried, because I was so longing for a group to feel safe in a spiritual way. You know, this kind of movie thing, hallelujah, and everybody is happy together, and yeah, I could never make it. I did try though, but I must say that I searched in Christianity. I did search in Christianity. Then much later I did I looked into Buddhism, and there's so many different kinds of that. But by the time I looked into Buddhism, it was more, it's lovely, of course, it's very interesting, there's a lot to learn. But I had already come to the point that I have to do it myself. There's no group for me. I mean, if somebody finds security and safety in a group of practitioners, that is lovely, that's wonderful. For me, it didn't work, and I had come to the point that that's not going to do it. I have to do it myself. So yeah, I did look into Christianity quite deeply. Although I was somewhat raised Protestant, I wanted to become a nun at times. Here we come to lose of control. I so often felt so overwhelmed by life, and I couldn't make myself understood to anybody. That the idea of going to monastery and having this super routine, that is what I imagined. Strict, praying, dang, and then gardening and helping people. Yeah, control. To me, it felt like super. And then to have all these sisters. And I remember when I saw the movie Story of a Nun, I think it's even black and white, I don't know, with Audrey Hepburn. My God, I cried my eyes out. That is also something. I cried a lot. That's probably good. Then I had some years much later, as an adult, where I couldn't cry anymore. Now I can again. So, okay, Mama, I wrote here, Mama, of course, as a child, and my mother, my mother, she was super present. My parents also said that, oh no, your mother shall not work. There should always be someone at home when you come, you shall be safe. So they really tried. As I told you, they really tried. But then my mother was, as I've also told you, deeply traumatized and had never worked on it. And also she couldn't, it was not available in the mainstream in the 60s. Nobody was talking about it. You know, I don't know if they started to do that in hippie communities, but my parents were far, far from that. So she was super controlling. Super controlling. I mean, I assume she denies that, and I assume she saw so many terrible things also happen to children on this refugee trek that lasted over 2 years. And very harsh winter, so I do assume she saw, you know, dead babies, and must have. So of course she was super afraid, and she was very, very controlling, and I always had a lot less freedom, was my experience, than my classmates. And then, yeah, I mean, where I went to school, as I said, that the town was bombed, but most of the people there, they had not done this refugee trek. They were from there. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, the other mothers were not so controlling, I felt. And I was the child that doesn't lie. So for a long time I thought my mother could see through me. She could see through me. Which then means that I wasn't me, doesn't it? I mean, I'm just like a glass house. It's like everybody can look in. And my father, as I've also said, so there will be some repetitions, but I mean, I look at it from different angles. My father was double. He was at least two people. Or not two people, two very different energies. The one was really loving and fun, and he would really try to be a father when he was at home. You know, play with us on the carpet, and we would all jump on him, and he could have great fun. Pretending to be a dog, and we would ride the dog, and really great fun. Very good also in teaching things, if you wanted to know something, especially these engineer things. But anyway, I love to ask him things, and he would explain. He was really good at explaining too. But then he would freak out, as I've told you. And that was very... For me, as a child, I never understood when he would freak out. When he would snap. I never understood it. Could happen anytime. And when he would freak out, sometimes he would beat us really badly. Not always. But, you know, sometimes it's good enough, right? To make you feel on your guard. Always. And with my mother, you also never knew. She was also totally overcharged all the time. Classic symptom of trying to have control, because there's no such thing as control in life. That I really had to learn. And I didn't learn it until I came here and I met my husband, and he told me that. He said, it's ridiculous, there is no control. There's life. Life is development. Absolute control doesn't exist. It's a myth. But, you know, as a child, not knowing that, and over, you know, from an early age on, knowing that it can switch. My father can switch. And then he seemed to me like a monster. I didn't recognize him as my father. I mean, I did. I mean, I knew it was my father. But he was totally different. Totally different. The whole energy was totally different. That's why I said, like two people. So he was kind of double. So I developed these enormous, what I call antennas, to check the situation, because I also felt that I was responsible for my little brothers, and I tried to protect them in time, which was completely impossible, and not very gratifying to try that. And I tell you, once this went so far that later, when I was in Munich, one time I took the subway home, and I don't know why then and there. It's not like I can read everybody's thoughts all the time, thank God, but you know, I was really, really tired. I will tell you, I was completely overworked, always, so to speak. So then I took the last subway. I remember it was the last subway home, so that must have been like 11:30, and I came right from the office, and I had to go in early next morning, so I was kind of spacing out, sitting in the subway. There's maybe 20 people with me in the subway, and I'm kind of spacing out, and just, yeah, I have no defenses, right? I'm finished. I have no defenses. And suddenly I hear somebody cry. And that is weird, right? Riding the subway and somebody's crying, really crying hard. So I kind of carefully look around and I see where the sound comes from. And I look, there was a young woman staring out of the window, but she wasn't crying. I think she was crying inside, but I heard her cry. And I was kind of spooked, of course. Whoa! And suddenly I hear everybody. Thankfully, there was only like 20 people or 18 people or so on the subway. I hear everybody. One man was swearing, damn it, I hate this. No. But he wasn't doing it either. Everybody was silent. I mean, subway, right? You just stand there or sit there and you're silent. But I heard their emotions. I heard their emotions. So I got so spooked and so scared that I jumped off the next stop and ran home. Okay, I've kind of, yeah, big antennas, try to keep control, which then makes that you are, even if you don't hear people's thoughts, you constantly overload your system. You know, like, imagine you work in an office. In the office I was working in, there was a lot of people. Some just came sometimes, and it was kind of complicated thing. So it's not like your normal TV station. So there was maybe 50, 60 people. So you try to have control over all these people every day and do your work. You completely, it's totally, and yeah, overcharging, but and still Arbeit, Arbeit, you know, work, work, work. Work was for a long time my defense. Just, you know, so I think that's workaholic. I think that's what you call it, right? It's like you use work to not feel, and to feel good and accepted, and to get this positive input, right? And yeah, here's some below that, of course, is like good grades was one thing, and duty, be dutiful, fulfill your duty to the mild degree. And I would, you know, I would do other people's work just because it was needed, instead of saying, well, you know, we can't do it this way. It cannot be done. I cannot do everybody's work. I did it then. I stayed till I had a key, and I stayed too late at night, came in the morning. So duty, work, and almost constantly having the feeling that it's too much. Too much, too much. Getting panic attacks of not getting the film ready in time. It's like... And then, of course, not being able to sleep. Not being able to wind down. And there I self-medicated with red wine. And I still do sometimes. And that's my way. I don't think it's ideal, but it's my way. So the wine is here also somewhere. Started pretty early with that, yeah, when I moved out, actually. When I moved from home, 19. Duty. Yeah, then there's this spirituality, which... Spirituality, yeah. I tried to make sense. I read about the Kabbalah, read about Tarot, of course the Bible, all kinds of things. I don't know, it was kind of a wild mix. Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce, yeah. And then but the spirituality was a difficult one, because this New Age scene that was really blooming there in the middle 80s, middle to late 80s in Munich. Oh, longer. I was there in the beginning of the 90s too, of course. Of course, no. Late 80s to mid 90s. This scene, I didn't like it. And I just listened to this trauma therapist who, you know, trying to prepare for this and getting back into it, who said that she discovered, even with herself, that she was kind of already years ago giving yoga classes and being the spiritual teacher, until she suddenly discovered for herself that she was using that to not look at the trauma, which of course you can do. You can use all kinds of things. So, I don't know. I mean, the way that life confronted me with this so-called New Age or esoteric scene, many times I just felt a falseness. I met people who were doing something, and I felt a falseness. I didn't feel sincerity. It was a lot about, I'm the great this and this teacher. And they might be. But I don't know. Because when I feel falseness like that, I step right back and I say, well, very good, do your stuff. I'm not there. So, yeah, it's just that is what I met. That is what I came across. Luckily enough, in many times in my life, not all times, my intuition has functioned okay. And maybe that's also part of the overload that I need to use my intuition. Although I grew up super brainy, like super intellectual, and my father always trying to, control, right? You know, everything's honest. It's like a motor. Life is not like a motor. You know, we still don't understand how ants work, as far as I know. Sheldrake had some interesting, very interesting experiments to that. Or bees, or birds. You know, it's not so easy to to understand. Life is, and humans definitely are not so easy to understand. Yeah, so that is this picture. I am stacking these boxes higher and higher, and then, you know, here it's already, says belief, Glaube. So that comes like after spirituality, to find a belief, which I've partly also used as a defense. Now, I hope I'm not doing that anymore, but you never know. Sometimes you find out later. So, you know, but here it's already, I'm at the point where I'm too small. I would need something to step on, right? I won't get it up there. I won't, this won't be able, I will not be able to lift it here. And then, you know, this dark stuff, whatever it is, like smoke or hallucination, is already here, right? So it's like the thing with the control is it's a lost cause, and that became obvious to me when I did this. It's a lost cause. There's no way. You can stack your stuff. And there's, I have met, you know, especially with the children of war, when I think of my aunts and uncles also. So my father had 5, and 1 brother, 4 sisters. My mother has 3, 1 brother, 2 sisters. So one of the sisters of my mother, for example, oh yeah, and of these, the 1 sister of my mother and all 4 sisters of my father were completely what I would call, okay, if you have workaholic, how can I say, cleanaholics. That probably doesn't exist. And this is also something, you know, thus you can use your need of control, and you're sanctioned by society. Because who doesn't love a woman that always has the house in order? The windows are always perfect, the curtains are always pressed and nice and clean, and all the doors, there's no fingers on any doors, there's, you know, everything is, you know, with one of my aunts, I was visiting there, I think that was the last time I said, I was eating breakfast, and while I'm still eating, she takes out the vacuum cleaner and cleans the carpet under my feet. And I said, what are you doing? She said, you dropped a bit of the crust. So she takes the vacuum cleaner to clean while I'm eating breakfast. It's, I don't know, I mean, maybe you think that's great. I mean, wonderful. I don't feel comfortable. You know, I didn't feel comfortable. Or to get a 3/4 hour lecture because there's a hair in the shower. You know, and if you have long hair, they can be there. So I didn't know. I didn't know. You know, it's one thing to, yeah, no, I think you get the picture, right? It's one thing to say, in this house we would like you to clean all the hairs out when you have showered. That's one thing. But to give a, 45-minute or whatever, 30-minute lecture on the righteousness of, that's really religious, isn't it? It's but religious not in a good way. It's like the 10 commandments of cleaning or whatever. I mean, it's just too much. And I would argue that all these people that I'm talking about now are deeply traumatized. And this having to put magazines exactly on the table so that the edges, that it all matches, it's perfectly straight. It's not life. To me, it's not home. It's not a home. And then I am really not the world's greatest cleaner, because my mother, her need of control, did not go into cleaning. It went into education and all kinds of things, but not into cleaning. So she's rather the opposite of that. So there was a lot of conflict. Yeah, this feeling of not having control. Yeah, one thing I missed in the beginning, that was this one thing that was to me extremely puzzling as a child. That was this double messages. So, for example, as I remember it, my parents were fighting almost every day. And now I remembered through the cleaning. So, and the thing is, it was always about the same things. So, my father would say to my mother that she should be more orderly and she should clean better. And it wasn't very clean at our house, and she wasn't orderly. So that's one thing. But like every day. And my mother would then counter, or she would be first, whoever. I mean, it could be both. And my mother would say to him that he should drink less alcohol. So you don't clean, you drink too much. And that every day, every day, every day, every day. So sometimes I've said I grew up in a war. But when I tried to speak about it, they would deny it. They would say, no, they're the most happy couple. Nobody's ever been so in love as they, and they love us, and they're totally stable, and they don't mean it. And then they fight. So it's like, you get all confused. You get totally confused. You can't trust yourself. There is no control. And thus, I would argue, unfortunately, because my parents very, very, very much, they said very much that they want us to experience safety and security. Which I totally understand, looking at their childhood. And of course, compared to them, since there was no war, I didn't see dead babies lying in the street or something, which a lot of other people have, that were on this refugee trek, and are, maybe, now, in other countries. So, relatively speaking, I had a lot more safety, of course. I had food every day, for example. And there was heating. But unfortunately, I didn't feel safe. So I developed this incredible need for control, which I think also in the end caused my what was the word that I found for it? Blowing the fuse, exactly. Where my system shut down because it was too much. It was getting too much. And that I told you about in another video. So the medicine for me, for this, was of course many years living with my husband, who is an artist at heart, even though he can't make his money this way, or it's not yet anyway. So try to control that, forget it. It's just, no, doesn't work. So I had to work with my need to control, and where is it necessary and where is it not. Also having children. You know, I was told this, and it turned out to be true. When I was pregnant with my first child, I was 32, and I was told, you just remember that when you give birth, it's a time bomb going off. And you know, nobody speaks about that. At least I hadn't heard it. And that is so true. If you're traumatized, if there's a lot in your basement, or how you want to call it, that you haven't looked at, and you look at this baby, this beautiful, beautiful baby. I don't know how it works, but I guess it's the inner child that gets touched, that gets reflected. So I started to have a lot of problems when I had my first child. And luckily, as I told you before, I mean, if there hadn't been my husband and so stable, yeah, mental hospital, I think, probably. So having children, I remember one thing where I became conscious of something. That was when my son, my first child, was learning to walk. He was learning to walk. And my husband came home from work, and he said, "How are you?" And I said, "Oh, I've got this terrible backache, and I don't know why. It's killing me. It's terrible." So he says, "Oh, wow, really?" Next day, he's gone to work, and I have still this terrible backache. And suddenly, I get aware of myself. And that was, you know, Paul is trying to walk, so he's kind of pulling himself up on all kinds of things. You know, chairs and tables and walls, and, you know, pulling himself up, and then kind of trying to walk. And suddenly, I notice what I'm doing. I am standing behind him with my hand down for hours. So he wouldn't fall and hurt himself. And I was doing it completely unconsciously. Well, thanks for the backache. How amazing to get a backache. So these were the steps I took. So this is many years ago. I've taken many steps. Gardening is one step against control, because I tried to garden with control. Oh my God. No. So this is, you know, this is many, many, many steps. But I think in the end, for me anyway, I need a spiritual perspective. I need a perspective that is bigger, that is larger than this life. And I talked about it a little bit in the last video. So I needed to really work with the idea that this is not it, this is not all, there's something before it, there's something after it, and, very important, there's something much bigger. You know, this world, this time, this place, whichever it may be, it's just one piece in a huge puzzle. It's a cell, or it's a piece of a puzzle, or how you want to call it. It's one color, and there's many colors. So for me, the medicine is to remember that, and that is why the sentence that I worked with on my subconscious with Psyche, as I said before, was, I rest eternally secure in the love of God. I rest eternally secure in the love of God. And, you know, Psyche is not abracadabra, so it's not like you do it once and it's done. Maybe that's true for some things, but I don't think it, in my experience anyway, it's not like, you know, balancing this sentence one time and that's it. After you have lived, you know, so many years from earliest childhood on with traumatizing incidents, plus I think science will find out more about that. It seems to be so that trauma gets inherited, actually physically inherited. In mice, they've done studies into the 7th generation. The higher stress level, the stress hormones, get inherited into the 7th generation. Interesting that the Indians, right? Have you heard that, the Iroquois Federation? That they said they only make decisions when they have thought it through for 7 generations. It's good. This, if we do this, will it be good for 7 generations? Then we do it. Otherwise we don't. I thought that was just a connection I made in my mind when I read this with the 7th generation. So these things need to be repeated, they need to be revisited, but it does get better, and it's worth doing it. And if I look at myself now and 20 years ago, I'm a lot calmer, I have more fun, I laugh more, I also say no much easier. I had a really hard time to say no. Oh, no, I'm doing that. No. You know, there was always this duty. It's my duty to fulfill everybody's wishes. No, no, it isn't. But, you know, I'm not enlightened. Or enlightenment actually doesn't do it either, they say. But, you know, I'm not always resting eternally secure in the love of God. I guess then my job would be over here, right? Somehow. So the job is not over. I'm still at it. But that is what I'm working on. I rest eternally secure in the love of God. And whichever definition of God there is. I don't actually have one anymore. It's too big. It's too big. I think that's really good in Islam when they say Allahu Akbar, and as I understand it, God is greater. As I think that is what it means. That means greater than all. not greater than this. It's like greater, period. That's kind of what I feel. So that's my definition. I rest eternally secure in the love of God. That's what I'm working on. And then there can be trust and much less control. Thank you for listening.